Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads where your heart says help, but your head screams, be careful? Lending money to family and friends can be emotionally draining, but the truth is, always giving in might be doing more harm than good. What many people don't realize is that lending money, especially in a disorganized way, can turn relationships into emotional traps, ruin your financial stability, and even perpetuate the dependency of those asking for help. It might sound controversial, but lending money isn't always the greatest act of love you can show your family. True help lies in teaching independence, guiding them towards self-sufficiency, and most importantly, protecting your own financial security. After all, what good is lending a hand today if tomorrow you find yourself in need of help too? Get ready to rethink everything you've been told about helping others. What you're about to learn won't just change how you approach these situations. It could positively impact the lives of those around you. Curious to know how? Let's dive in. This could be the insight that frees you from guilt, conflict, and poor decisions. Picture yourself at a lively party, filled with laughter, great food, and music playing in the background. Suddenly, a friend approaches you with a serious look, lowering their voice as the conversation shifts. They ask for something unexpected, a loan. The mood changes, doesn't it? This awkward moment can catch anyone off guard, leaving you torn between embarrassment and a sense of obligation. But stop for a second. How many times have you been on either side of this situation? Asking or lending? When someone asks to borrow money, it's rarely easy for them. After all, who enjoys admitting they're facing financial troubles? Yet, for the person hearing the request, the emotions can be just as complicated. You're caught in a dilemma. Do you help your friend, or do you protect your own finances? Lending money may seem straightforward on the surface, but it carries far deeper implications than we often realize. Think about how these moments challenge not only your emotions, but also your financial mindset. What tips the scale, your heart or your head? And when it's time to decide, are you truly weighing the risks, or are you simply acting on impulse? This is where financial literacy becomes an invaluable ally, helping you separate emotion from reason when it matters most. Now, picture the situation flipped. You're the one in need. Just imagining it gives you a knot in your stomach, doesn't it? That's because asking for money isn't just about dollars and cents. It touches on pride, vulnerability, and even the fear of hearing no. So, when you're on the receiving end of a request, it's essential to keep this perspective in mind. Not to automatically give in, but to approach the situation with both empathy and wisdom. Lending or not lending shouldn't be about generosity or selfishness. It's about understanding the context. If a friend urgently needs help for something essential, like fixing their car to get to work, the decision might seem straightforward. But what if the request is for something non-essential, like a vacation? These moments put you in the uncomfortable position of judge, a role that's tricky, but often unavoidable. And what happens when the request comes from someone you deeply care about, like a close family member? That's when things get even messier. Separating emotional ties from financial logic feels almost impossible. But does helping someone always mean risking your own financial security? This is a question too few people ask themselves before saying yes. It's fascinating how these situations can reveal so much about our beliefs and priorities. Lending money might feel like an act of kindness, but sometimes it's more about our desire to feel useful or trustworthy. Ironically, this can put us in vulnerable positions, taking risks we shouldn't have to bear. Ultimately, every loan request is, in some way, a test of both your financial and emotional skills. That's why it's so important to know how to respond without damaging relationships or compromising your own goals. And, of course, to remember one crucial thing, saying no isn't always unkind. It might just be the best way to truly help. So, how do you handle these requests wisely and fairly? Is there a way to avoid awkwardness while still protecting your finances? Thankfully, there are strategies to turn these tricky moments into thoughtful decisions. Let's dive into them together. When someone asks to borrow money, The first reaction often comes straight from the heart. After all, who wouldn't want to help a friend or a relative in need? But that's where the danger lies. Acting purely on emotion can lead to complicated situations that affect both your finances and your relationships. Knowing how to handle these requests is a skill everyone should develop, especially if you value financial literacy. Now, imagine you're about to say yes to a loan. Do you stop to consider whether this decision truly makes sense? Most people act without reflecting, which can lead to future problems. This guide is here to help you make conscious, balanced decisions about lending money. Because, in the end, making wise choices in these situations isn't just good for you. It's beneficial for everyone involved. Financial decisions require a balance between your head and your heart. It's not about being insensitive. It's about understanding that helping someone doesn't have to mean compromising your own stability. There are simple strategies that can help you avoid regret while protecting both your finances and your relationships. After all, financial literacy isn't just about earning money. It's about knowing how to use it responsibly. One of the biggest mistakes people make when lending money is acting in the heat of the moment. It can feel like a test of friendship, can't it? But in reality, it's in these moments that rationality is most important. The goal here is to help you build a strong financial mindset, one that sees beyond the surface of a request and allows you to act with clarity, free of guilt or discomfort. Let's be honest, lending money is never as simple as it seems. Saying yes can sometimes lead to misunderstandings, expectations, and, worse, the feeling that you're always available to fix someone else's financial problems. That's why following clear, structured steps can completely change how you approach these situations. And don't worry, this isn't about becoming cold or distant. On the contrary, learning to say no respectfully can be one of the most generous acts you can do for someone. Sometimes, declining a loan is the first step in helping a person learn to manage their finances better and, perhaps, develop stronger financial habits for the future. Of course, every situation is unique, and there's no universal rule. But by applying these 6 steps, you'll have a compass to navigate tough decisions with more confidence. After all, lending money without clear boundaries can often be a false form of help, merely postponing bigger problems. So why not learn to handle this in a more effective way? What follows isn't just a list of tips. It's a practical guide to help you act wisely in any situation. Each step has been carefully designed to balance empathy with rationality, ensuring you don't fall into emotional traps that could jeopardize your financial well-being. So, pay close attention. In the next steps, you'll learn how to identify what's really behind a loan request and how to respond strategically. Most importantly, you'll discover how to protect your relationships while safeguarding your own prosperity. Ready to turn these tricky moments into smart decisions? Let's start with the first step. When someone asks to borrow money, the first thing that comes to mind is the reason. But do you truly understand why they're asking? Often, the financial issue runs deeper than a one-time need. That's why, before saying yes or no, it's worth gently asking about the situation. This conversation isn't just for you. It might also help them uncover the root of their problem. Imagine a friend asking for money because they're behind on rent. At first, it feels like an emergency, right? But as you dig a little deeper, you find out they're spending too much on unnecessary things like expensive dinners or unused subscriptions. Evaluating the situation is crucial. Lending money without understanding the context is like pouring water into a leaky bucket. It doesn't solve the real issue. A helpful approach here is to see yourself as a consultant, not a financer. Calmly asking about their financial situation can reveal more than you expect. Often, the person is so overwhelmed by their problems that they don't realize where they're going wrong. Helping them see the bigger picture can be a powerful form of support, one that doesn't require you to open your wallet. It's also essential to avoid lending money to someone who's already drowning in debt. While it might feel harsh, this approach can make the difference between perpetuating a problem and helping to solve it. For instance, if a friend is buried in credit card debt, the best way to help might be suggesting they renegotiate with their bank rather than patching the problem with more money. If you want to go further, consider giving something even more valuable than money: your time. Helping someone organize their finances, or even find an extra source of income could be life-changing. Why not sit down together, review their expenses and income, and create a practical plan? Tools like online spreadsheets or budgeting apps can be incredibly helpful in this process. Of course, some emergencies are legitimate. Situations like medical expenses, car repairs essential for work, or urgent home repairs require a different kind of evaluation. Understanding the reason for the request helps you separate genuine needs from fleeting wants. But even in these cases, be sure to consider the next steps before deciding to lend money. Understanding the reason also protects you from falling into emotional traps. Often, people asking for money present compelling arguments, and you might feel pressured to help without thinking it through. However, with a solid financial mindset, you can look beyond the words and make a clear, informed decision. This isn't a lack of empathy, it's wisdom. Finally, remember that every loan request is a learning opportunity, both for you and the person asking. If they get upset or offended by your questions, it could be a sign that the request isn't as legitimate as it seems. In that case, it's worth reconsidering before you say yes. Now that you know how to understand the reason behind the request, you're ready for the next step: distinguishing between real needs and unnecessary wants. This is one of the keys to avoiding poor financial decisions. Let's explore that together. One of the most important things when dealing with loan requests is knowing how to distinguish what's truly essential from what's just a whim. Imagine someone asking for money to upgrade their car because they're tired of the old model. Is that a necessity? Of course not. These are the moments when rationality is crucial. Not every financial help request deserves a yes, especially when it's tied to unnecessary wants. Car upgrades, vacations, parties, or even aesthetic home renovations fall into the non-essential category. And do you know what happens when you lend money for these things? Often, the person feels encouraged to repeat the behavior. After all, if it worked once, why not try again? Worse yet, the lender ends up feeling taken advantage of, which can strain even the strongest relationships. Lending money for non-essentials can also lead to something even riskier: the idea of lending with interest. It might be tempting to think, if I'm taking the risk, I should at least get something in return. But this is a trap. Not only does it jeopardize the relationship, but it also pushes you into a gray area that could be perceived as predatory lending, which goes against the principles of sound financial management. Even if you don't charge interest, the informality of these loans can lead to significant issues. Imagine lending money for a vacation, only to find months later that the borrower hasn't repaid you. How do you ask for repayment without seeming insensitive? That's why avoiding these requests from the start is the best way to preserve important relationships. Saying no politely can prevent future resentment. Additionally, by refusing requests for non-essential expenses, you help the person reconsider their priorities. Often, those making these requests are acting impulsively, without thinking about the impact on their own budget. Your refusal might be the push they need to reflect on their choices and, hopefully, adopt a more mature financial mindset. Of course, saying no can be hard, especially to someone close to you. But you don't have to be harsh. Phrases like, "I'm sorry, but I can't help with this right now," or "I think it might be better for you to explore a more affordable option," are respectful ways to decline. You can even suggest creative alternatives, such as saving in another area to achieve their goal. If they persist, it's a great opportunity to show that helping doesn't mean jeopardizing your own stability. Why not suggest a conversation about financial literacy? Recommending books like The Richest Man in Babylon or Rich Dad, Poor Dad can be more valuable than any amount of money. After all, Teaching someone to fish is always better than simply giving them a fish. Remember, protecting your finances isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. Those with a solid reserve and a strong financial mindset know they can't compromise their resources for non-essentials, especially when the return is uncertain. So before agreeing, ask yourself, if I lend this money, am I truly helping, or am I just delaying the problem? Now that you understand the importance of avoiding loans for fleeting wants, let's move on to another critical aspect: how to document these agreements and protect both parties. Ready to learn? How many times have you heard someone say, "Trust me," when asking for a loan? That trust might be sincere, but it's no guarantee that the money will make its way back to your wallet. That's why one essential step is formalizing any loan, even with close friends or family. It might feel uncomfortable, but a clear, documented agreement protects both you and the borrower. After all, a document is a memory that never fails. Informal loans are one of the leading causes of financial disputes among friends and family. Imagine lending money to a relative, only to have them deny months later that they promised to pay it back. Without anything in writing, you're left in a vulnerable position. What starts as an act of generosity can quickly turn into a source of arguments and resentment. Formalizing the loan prevents this. So, how can you do this in a straightforward way? You don't need a complex contract. A simple document signed by both parties outlining the terms of the loan will resolve most issues. Include details such as the amount lent, the repayment date, and, if applicable, installment terms. This applies even to small amounts. After all, who said only large sums cause problems? It might seem excessive, but formalizing a loan also teaches responsibility to the borrower. When they see that you're taking it seriously, they're more likely to handle the situation with care and respect. This reinforces the importance of treating money with maturity and prevents the mindset of "it's just a favor" between friends. Financial education is about encouraging responsibility in every situation. If you're unsure where to start, simple tools like a receipt or even financial management apps can help. You can also find templates for loan agreements online if you prefer a more structured approach. It's all about creating a culture of transparency where both sides know exactly what to expect. This not only safeguards your finances, but also strengthens the relationship. Another critical point is setting a repayment deadline. Without a defined timeline, the loan turns into an indefinite, maybe someday, which can strain the relationship over time. Set clear dates and, if possible, follow up regularly. This doesn't mean being pushy, but showing that you value both the money and the commitment made. Financial discipline begins with respecting promises. If the borrower refuses to sign any kind of document, that's a red flag. Someone unwilling to formalize the agreement may not be as committed as they claim. In that case, it might be best to decline the request and avoid future headaches. Remember, saying no is a way to protect yourself and the relationship. Formalizing the loan also has a psychological advantage. When something is documented, people tend to take it more seriously. It's different from a verbal agreement, where promises can be forgotten or reinterpreted. With everything laid out on paper, the chances of misunderstandings drop significantly, and you'll rest easier knowing you took all the necessary precautions. Finally, remember that formalizing a loan isn't a lack of trust, it's smart. Those who understand the value of money know that strong relationships rely on clarity and mutual respect. Now that you're ready to protect your loans with documentation, let's discuss something even more critical: your emergency fund and why it should never be used to help others. Ready for the next step? An emergency fund is like a life jacket. You hope to never need it, but it's there for extreme situations. Lending money is already a risk, but tapping into your emergency fund to do so can be a serious mistake. This money has a clear purpose: to protect you in unexpected situations like job loss, health issues, or urgent home repairs. Using it impulsively can put your financial stability at risk. Imagine someone asking for help during a tough time, and you think, I have my emergency fund, so I can lend them the money. It seems noble, but what if an emergency arises for you right after? Without that safety net, you could find yourself taking on debt to cover expenses that your fund was meant to handle. Financial literacy starts with keeping your priorities in check. It's also important to remember that your emergency fund isn't a communal safety net. You built it with discipline and effort for a very specific purpose, your security. Lending from it, even to someone close, diverts it from that purpose. For example, imagine a freelancer using their emergency fund to help a friend, only to need that money days later because a client delayed payment. Chaos ensues. This doesn't mean you can't help. It just means you need to be strategic. Instead of lending from your fund, why not offer practical advice to the person asking? Sometimes, guiding them to alternatives like renegotiating debts or finding extra income can be far more effective. Tools like finance apps or free online courses can be excellent resources for someone trying to get back on track. Using your emergency fund can also trigger a cascade of problems. Once it's compromised, you might have to rely on credit cards or bank loans to handle your own future emergencies. And we all know high interest rates are the enemy of solid financial health. Protecting your emergency fund is, in essence, protecting your future. Think of your emergency fund as a shield. Without it, you're left vulnerable to whatever life throws your way. Lending from it might seem like an immediate solution to someone else's problem, but it can't come at the expense of your own stability. Helping others shouldn't put you at risk. If saying no feels difficult, think about the long term. Maintaining a strong financial position means you'll be able to help more effectively in the future, without jeopardizing what you've built. Saying no now isn't selfish. It's ensuring you're in a position to support the right people at the right time. Protecting your emergency fund also teaches an important lesson. When others see the value you place on it, they learn to prioritize real needs over temporary fixes. It's an indirect way of helping them develop their own financial literacy, something far more impactful than a loan. Finally, never forget that your emergency fund is a cornerstone of your financial success. Without it, even the best laid plans can crumble. Now that you understand why lending from this fund is a no-go, let's dive into another key principle. Only lend what you can afford to give away. Ready to explore this idea? If there's one rule that can simplify all these decisions, it's this. Only lend what you can afford to treat as a gift. It may sound simple, but it carries profound wisdom. Money you lend should never jeopardize your financial stability or long-term goals. Lending inherently comes with uncertainty, and viewing the money as something that might not come back is a way to protect yourself emotionally and financially. Consider this scenario. A friend asks to borrow a significant amount, and you lend it, trusting they'll repay on time. But what if they can't? This happens more often than we'd like to think. Treating a loan as a potential gift, when feasible, eliminates the stress of chasing repayment and avoids conflicts. This approach not only preserves relationships, but also helps you cultivate a balanced financial mindset. Of course, this doesn't mean you should go around handing out money. The idea is simple. If the requested amount exceeds what you're comfortable losing, it's better to decline. For example, if someone asks for an amount equivalent to your monthly budget and you can't absorb that loss, the wisest choice is to say no. Prioritizing your financial security isn't selfish. It's responsible. Another benefit of this rule is how it changes the emotional dynamic of lending. When you view the amount as a possible gift, you release yourself from the burden of collecting repayment. This helps avoid the resentment or hurt feelings that can arise if the money doesn't come back. And if the borrower surprises you by repaying, it's a win. You retain the relationship and receive an unexpected bonus. If you're thinking, but what about larger amounts that can't be treated as gifts? The answer is straightforward. Don't lend. In those situations, explore other ways to help. Offer financial advice, suggest job opportunities, or share practical tips for reducing expenses. Creative solutions are often more effective and less risky than putting your money on the line. Adopting this rule is also an exercise in self-awareness. It forces you to evaluate what truly matters to you and how each financial decision impacts your life. Building a strong foundation in financial literacy isn't just about earning or saving. It's about using the resources you have wisely. Now imagine the impact of applying this mindset to all your financial decisions. It brings clarity and eliminates much of the stress that money and relationships often create. By following this rule, you not only protect your finances, but also strengthen your confidence in navigating delicate situations. It's a prime example of how financial literacy can transform your life. If saying no feels difficult, remember that this no can be the greatest lesson you give someone. Learning to handle financial refusals often fosters greater resilience and creativity in others. In this way, you're helping them grow, even if they don't realize it at first. Ultimately, adopting this rule isn't just a practical strategy, it's a lifestyle. It reflects the wisdom of someone who values both their resources and the relationships they've built. Now that you've mastered this essential principle, let's tie all these lessons together. Imagine how your life would look if every financial decision was made with clarity and confidence. It's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about building a solid foundation for the future. When you learn to say yes or no with purpose, you're not only protecting your finances, but also inspiring others to do the same. That's how small actions lead to big changes. Now it's your turn. Which of the steps we discussed resonated most with you? Have you experienced similar situations? Share your stories in the comments. This is a space to exchange ideas, learn together, and strengthen our financial literacy. After all, real-life experiences can be just as valuable as the best advice. Before you go, why not take one more step? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep learning how to transform your financial mindset and make wiser decisions. Each video here is designed to bring you closer to a more balanced and prosperous life.